So I'm here with Jenesse, and we're talking about how to like manage the holiday stress. And there's a lot coming up: irregular schedules, different foods, different, seeing relatives. We're out of rhythm. How can we survive this, especially with our big emotion kids, right? And so we're going to be talking about a few things that, Jenesse and I have been doing really good work on, and I would love to support you today, Jenesse, with this. And so the first thing let's talk about are how to keep some semblance of normal as you go through this, right? And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to kind of hold on to a few of the routines, especially at the beginning and the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that. Is that something that, as you're anticipating things coming up, are you going to be able to do things like hold bedtime within an hour of when you usually have it, like have mornings kind of start off similarly each day? How do you anticipate that going?
It might be a challenge to start mornings off the same way because kids will be out of school. We're generally a little more relaxed about, what happens in the morning. And we also have, out of town relatives who are going to be staying with us. So there's just different people in the house. And then I'm off work, which is unusual, but I'm off work for about 10 days during the holidays too. So there's just more time with the kids, which is awesome, but also there's just more opportunity for me to witness the behavior that, sometimes happens at school, and there's more people in the mix kind of helping when they're at school. So I don't see all of the tantrums and testing. And then there's just more of a dose of it as a working parent. There's just going to be more of that and more situations to mitigate and cope with and help my daughter through in particular. So, was your question, we can, make sure that we're limiting screen time first thing in the morning because that's a big trigger for both of my kiddos.
Yeah. Yep.
We can try not to have a bunch of junk food in the morning. We can have a healthy breakfast, but as the day goes on, there will be screen time. There will be junk food. It's the holidays. It's hard to avoid that stuff, I guess, but maybe trying really hard to at least start the day right can be a help.
Yes. Okay. So you're on the right track. So I feel like the question kind of prompted you to grab a few things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So things like having that healthy breakfast, limiting the screen time in the morning because you have seen the connection between, starting the day off with that and how it can roll out for the day. Often it can set a tone of today's a screen day, and then you have to pull them out of that, right? Mm-hmm. So I love the idea of limiting screen time till afternoon, mm-hmm. And then, also the other thing you can think about is even if it is a different, it's different because there's different timing and different people around and things like that, that there is still some, there's maybe the holiday routine, right? It's a different routine, but it's still there. Yeah. And so, things just actually, unless you just, you decide to deviate and you're really clear about that, today's going to be a pajama day. Mm-hmm. We're going to hang out with our toys the day after Christmas and get to have a pajama day. But the rest of the days, you still get up and you still, do the hygiene bits and the getting dressed pieces and the breakfast piece and, and have that mini routine of about an hour, right? 45 minutes to an hour be intact each day. Yeah. Just to reflect back to you, your good idea and kind of solidify it there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like that idea of okay, well, we don't have our normal routine, but this is the holiday routine, and maybe even talking them through it. Mm-hmm. Or writing it down. So it's something visual that they look at in the morning. That's oh yeah, this is for the next couple weeks, this is kind of what it looks like. I mean, it shifts halfway through because then they have winter camp when I go back to work. But at least there's the ability to predict some of it and have it written down and say, this is what to expect.
And that's something we've worked on together before, right? Talking about the power of if you can preview things for the kids and even rehearse it through, by talking it through or walking it through. But then even more, the other layer I would add to that is here it is, and build in a few choices for them so that mm-hmm. they can also feel like they're influencing it a bit. It could be as simple as do we do breakfast first and then get dressed, or get dressed and do breakfast? Something maybe they can have opportunity to change it up from the regular school routine just a little bit. Mm-hmm. That could make it fun for them to have some influence over it. And and it's a bit of a motivation hack, because if you allow, like, in the I care model that I've shared with you before, if you give them like a sense of, the A is the autonomy. If you give them a sense of like having some autonomy, they're much more likely to be motivated to get on board, and they'll just be like more, like, it's almost like they'll listen more. Then so instead of like, yeah, mom, okay, fine, or something, it's like, oh, I have a choice here. Like all of a sudden, like I'm like thinking about the schedule now. Like, where do I want to do this piece, or where do I want that piece? So that could be a really good way to kind of deepen that partnership in setting things up for success.
Yeah, I like that. And maybe even when we're like creating the little checklist or, sort of like maybe even like include that area of like a menu, like here's a couple things we could do in this time period and you guys choose.
Yeah, beautiful. Right. So you have like a block that has choices, and it's up to what they want to do. And oftentimes we have to give our kids, this is like a hot tip I have for all parents with the screen time, but over the summer break and winter break and anytime that we're out of school schedule, is that oftentimes they like lose track of the choice, like the other options besides screen time, because screens are just so compelling, and like they tell us what to do next all the time. Watch the next episode, play the next game, try the next level, try the next app, try the next, and they like, we can sometimes go into autopilot and just kind of follow the directions, and then forget that, like, oh, there's books, and there's Legos, and there's art, and there's outside time, and there's all these other options that don't necessarily grab us and tell us what to do with them, right? And like what's next. And so sometimes that menu, it could even be not even built into each day, but you could also come up with a big fat list of all the fun things that you get to do when you're home together and have all this spaciousness and your relatives are there. Like, wow, we have enough people to play a really like robust game of Monopoly because there's like 6 of us, or that sort of feeling. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, and it'll be fun to see what lands on the list too. I mean, it's just one of those. And I would always, as a parent, like come to it with several things in mind already to kind of help get started.
Yeah.
Brainstorming. Because otherwise they might say, well, I want to watch this show and then that show and that show.
Yeah, that's probably the first round.
Right. And you could say,
that's great. Let's put that on the list for the afternoon. And, right now that it's morning time, it's actually like who wants to walk the dog and who wants to like help me with breakfast and who wants to go to the park, or, like those are the other kinds of options.
Right. I also recommend like having a quiet hour. This is not necessarily going to happen every day, and you can't necessarily put it on the calendar every day, but just to kind of know, like, what does quiet hour mean? Like, what are some options? And to get them used to that is like going to help, not just during the holidays and not just in the summer breaks and things, but just like for all the years to come, right? Just this idea that there is such a thing and we do something in it. And I think you've done something like that before, right, Jenesse?
Yeah, we've definitely on the weekends tried to carve out time where it's like, okay, you've had an hour to watch shows, or you've done this, kind of raucous activity for a little while. Like this is now, it's like, we're going to read or play with Legos or play a board game or, do something a little more low key.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. And maybe you can ask them like what they want to call it too. Like quiet hour is not that exciting, but they're like, chillax time or something. You never know. Kids come up with the best things. Like, I had these like self-regulation corner in my classroom and I wanted to call it the chill zone or something, but I thought, no, I'm going to follow the thing where I ask the kids, and have them name it. And they said, well, if that's the place we put our lids back on, let's call it the lid shop. And one kid said that, everyone's like, yeah, it's our lid shop. And now instead of them being like sent to the calm down corner, they're like, I need to go to the lid shop. And, what's that?
I'm gonna go repair my lid.
Yeah, I gotta go find a lid to put on and repair my lid. And then they stocked it full of all kinds of really great things. Like one kid brought in lavender satchel to smell. Another kid brought in a little like Discman from forever ago with some CDs that you could listen to some calming music. Another kid brought her yoga cards in, and they stacked up the lid shop with lids that you could put on. It was just so brilliant. I love it. The kids are so good when you lead them there,
Yeah.
like, get them into that zone of brainstorming and collaborating, and they get really excited and they really lean in. So I see that for you and the kids as you have these little huddles with them, these little meetings with them.
Yeah, that kind of gave me an idea about Finn too, because, Susie's my kid who I bring up all the time, but Finn is also, I think, really great at brainstorming and helps Susie think of things too. So maybe having them work together what goes in their lid shop.
Yeah.
Most of these lid shop, but Finn could probably think of some good stuff for the lid shop too.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that we often put in the lid shop is like, bring a friend. And like, you just kind of go in there and you have your little huddle and like maybe look at a book together. And it's like, you know, some misery loves company, sometimes in the worst way, but sometimes in the best ways, right? Like someone who can share, it can help me just kind of co-regulate and chill out. Yeah. And I always recommend refreshing the calm down corner or the lid shop in your house, the positive timeout space, before holidays, because you know, it's going to be a time where, like you said, the possibility of meltdowns and things are going to be greater, and they're going to need to schedule for themselves or find themselves there, you know, possibly more frequently because they just have more time, literally, with you know, in the space and everything. I would love to talk about one other zone that might be really helpful is when you're visiting a relative or you have like a lot of what can kind of wear down your stamina, right? Like a lot of excitement or a lot of hype or a lot of like family activity. Where like all the cousins are together now. It's like this huge play part, you know, thing. And then oftentimes that can be like the perfect setup for a sensitive child with big emotions to have a hard time. And one thing you mentioned at the beginning of our meeting today was that, you know, she, you know, not wanting to avoid the situation where you're like, we got to go because Susie can't handle it, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to hear, you know, what you think about, you know, the previewing aspect of when you're going to these situations, you're going to head into these situations, how you could kind of set her up for success with previewing. I'm curious what comes to mind.
I mean, what comes to mind is like reminding her like, oh, when we go to, you know, our aunt's house, it's usually a lot of kids and there's a big backyard and sometimes there's a trampoline or something kind of wild back there. And, you know, I just want to make sure like you keep your body safe when you're on the trampoline. And also when you're playing with all the kids, you know, sometimes it's easy for one kid to feel left out. Sometimes that's her. So like, if you're feeling left out, you know, and you're feeling lonely, like come and find me, you know, you can always come and find me at the gathering and, you know, we can take a couple minutes to figure out, you know, what to do with that feeling of being lonely or not being included.
I love it because, you know, this is not necessarily top of mind for her, that, you know, it's a good reminder that she can come and find you. And one, you know, we've been talking about like the lid on, lid off piece. And I know that you've introduced it in some iteration to Susie, right? Where she, you know, you're talking about her amping up or calming down. And I wonder about also preemptively, like kind of just helping her remember that she doesn't have to wait until, you know, an emergency or if, like she get, you know, she's really upset to ask for some support. You can say, you know, try to work it out. If you try one thing and you don't feel like it's going well and you feel yourself, you know, going there, you feel yourself like getting loud or getting really upset or maybe kind of wanting to tell everyone you know, that it's not going well, something like that. The different signs that you have observed that she start to have some awareness around this. She's at that age, that cusp of age where she can start to like notice and actually put the brakes on a little sooner than she used to as she's maturing. And so you might mention to her like, yeah, and you don't need to wait until it's like a really big problem and you're really upset. Like even if you you know, you tried once or tried twice to say something and you don't feel heard or whatever, you can come find mom, right? Like you said. I would just add that little piece in there of like continuing to coach her on her self-awareness of like when to get support. Something I've done hundreds and hundreds of times with kids is like, oh, interesting, you waited till you were like, you know, screaming and shouting to ask for some support. What do you think might have happened if you had like come and found me when things started to get really rough and you'd already tried a couple times, you know? And so anyway, just a thought. I'm just to throw that in there as something you could, you know, mention to her and help her continue to build that as well.
Yeah, I think it's such a helpful suggestion as far as just, you know, because we forget and we get excited and we like put a rosy lens on like, oh, we're going to go to my aunt's house or we're going to my sister's house. And it's just going to be so much fun. And I think we all get kind of amped up and excited. And we don't think through like, hey, let's talk about what the expectations are when we're there. Let's talk about like, you know, what are some things we can do to fix, you know, when things start to fall apart. Like we almost never like have a little chat ahead of time to kind of like a little pep talk, you know? And I think that's such a good idea to remember that, like, it probably help us too to have more realistic expectations of how the night's going to go. Like, I think that's part of it, is like we get upset when we see her starting to fall apart. We like immediately catastrophize and we're like, oh, this is going to be one of those nights where we might have to call it quits early, or this might be one of those nights where it's just, you know, she's going to be the one kid at the party screaming and acting crazy, and all the other people are going to be like, you know, because she kind of has a reputation that precedes her at this point. So it's kind of a good reminder that like we need to go into it with some ideas about what the strategies are for us and what the strategies are for her.
Nice. Yes. I just think that there's something about, you know, being kind of grounded in the reality of the situation, right? That's kind of, it actually sort of helps you to be proactive. And one of the things that you might also want to estimate, and we can talk this through a little bit. Well, there's two parts. Estimating like, what is her sort of expiration? Like if you were to set an egg timer of like how long Susie can handle being on her own in a big group of kids and a lot happening before she tends to have a hard time. You might want to kind of get a sense of that and build in a little bit of like, I know that in general, my daughter does really well if I check in with her every half hour or every 20, you know, or something, right? Or she gets a break after an hour of like really intense stuff, that I have her come and sit with me and like, you know, like have a chance to kind of reset and then return with greater success. If you were to estimate like a time, and let's just say it's like, you know, it's a pretty high energy trampoline backyard play situation. What would you guess that she, you know, would be her zone of success? Like, you know,
it really depends. I mean, if she's like feeling like she's really included and there's, you know, a group where she's kind of either the ringleader or feeling like an equal participant in the fun, she can go a good hour without anyone, you know, having to check in or have her fall apart. But sometimes we walk in and within 10 minutes, like she and her brother are fighting over something and it escalates really quickly. It's so hard to predict those situations.
Well, I hear the range like within an hour. Yeah. Oh, that's good to know. It's just good information. One thing we might consider too is like before like releasing her to the group. And I know you've done this before, Jenesse. Like you said, you wanted reminders, right? Of like, oh yeah, what do I do when I what are some strategies I figured out that I've shared with you that you could help me remember right now as I'm heading into this? Is like, you know, help her settle in with the group before. I mean, and it's especially hard during holiday times because we feel obligated to like, oh, hi, it's so good to see you. And the kids run off and you're like, I hope that goes well, you know. But so to just politely say, hey, just a sec, I'm gonna set my kids up and make sure they're good, and then I'm gonna come and visit with you, and then like politely bypass and go kind of like help her get, because you know, for Susie, because she has such sensitivity, and like you said, it could be 10 minutes, like it's already kind of game over. That you could go in there and like help her orient to the situation, right? It's like, oh, it looks like there's this kind of game going on, there's that kind of game going on, you know, and kind of just helping her with the transition in.
I've literally never done that, and it's such a good idea. Like, it seems so common sense, but especially when I walk into like a big crowded house full of people that I don't see that often, it's like immediately both kids are gone to find the other kids. And I don't think I've ever just like walked with her to like the group to kind of feel it out and see how she's doing. I don't think I've ever done that. Not once. I think it's really helpful.
All right. We've had a little breakthrough, Jenesse. I mean, we've been working together a while, and there's like, we always find something new. That's like, all right. So that's one that could be a bit of a game changer. You can try it out and see how that settles her. And that's a great time too to just like whisper the reminder in your ear, like, sweetie, remember, if you start to feel like you're lip slipping and you're feeling frustrated, come find me.
Yeah.
I'll be, and you can even point to where you are, because that's the other thing too, is that like it's an environment she hasn't been in a while. It's like, you know, you just need to go through that door and find me. I'll probably be either in the kitchen or where the couch is. And just help her to connect those dots. Yeah. I love it, Jenesse. We are setting you up for success.
Yeah.
All right. So if you don't mind, bring it home for yourself. If you don't mind reflecting back a few of the things that you're gonna be checking out here for ideas.
Yeah, well, as far as routines, I want to talk through the routines ahead of time with the kiddos and make sure they have a chance to shape the routine to some degree. They have some ideas about how they might spend their mornings that don't involve screen time and unhealthy, cake for breakfast kind of stuff. Like, what are we going to eat? What are we going to do to fill that time in the morning? And then going into, kind of the holiday party scene, just making sure that she knows to come find me if she starts to unravel, and also to get her set up for success, just walking in the door and like bypassing, the aunts, uncles, cousins, and saying, I'll come back to you in a second, making sure that she's kind of hooked into whatever the first activity is that she's going to engage in. And that, again, she's reminded to come find me. Oh, and just reviewing before we go, like having a little preview of like, what's the house going to look like? What's going on in there? What are some things to look out for? How can we all have a really fun time? Like, we're all expecting to have a fun time. So what are the ingredients of the fun time? And they really don't include, falling apart and not asking for help. Like, we want to make sure to avoid that. And she's, encouraged to come interrupt me, even if look like I'm having fun. Like, I want her to come. That's way better than having to like pull the plug on the whole evening and have to leave early.
Definitely. I love it. And then as much as possible, building in some quiet time activities to kind of balance out the amped up level of the holidays was another one I wanted to just make sure you kept. Yeah, good one.
Yeah.
Yes. Excellent. Jenesse, I'm feeling so hopeful for you for this holiday season. How are you feeling? Are you feeling like you got a little more to go into it with now?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because this season I think it's a mixed bag for a lot of people, particularly people with kids who aren't always, able to self-regulate. And, if you've had like loss, the holidays can bring up some of that. And so there's a little bit of like realizing, the self-care, like to put on your oxygen mask first kind of thing too. The season is so fun, and I always have really high expectations for it. And usually it's a really, great time of year, but it's just important to not go into it with such a negative mindset, but also just to be a little bit more realistic. Like, here's some things I know to expect. Here's some things, to plan for. And one of those things is just the kiddos not always being able to, they're 8 and 6. Like, they just have trouble with, kind of coping skills and conflict resolution and stuff in their normal environment, much less the holidays. So yeah, I feel a lot more prepared thinking through it rationally and, right. Not my like rose-colored lenses.
Well, and you brought it to attention. So that was your wisdom. Your wisdom was to say, I actually want to take a real look at the holidays and what's coming up here and how this could go. And I want to have a game plan. So good on you. I really admire you for that, Jenesse.
Thank you.
Wise mama move for sure. And I don't want to lose the piece you just said about self-care. I think that's a really great like last piece to really consider is how are you going to be putting your oxygen mask on while you are, you do have more time in this family incubator and all the things with the sugar and the screen times and the relatives and then what you mentioned, like, bringing up, some possible losses and grief and expectations and all these things. So, you know what I'm talking about. So what are some ways you can build in, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes for yourself to sort of reset? And a lot of it is the mindset, right? You just did a wonderful job describing that, having kind of going into it without the rose-colored glass, kind of more realistically and practically. But I'm wondering, what are some micro self-care practices? I mean, we've talked about a bunch of them in the past, but I'm just wondering, like, what's appealing to you right now?
I think just, I don't get to walk my dog that often. Like, I actually have to pay a dog walker to walk her while I'm at work. So just taking time to walk the dog by myself, like everyone understands like, oh, the dog needs time too, because actually this is our first Christmas with our dog. And I think she's going to need, just like the kids, like she's going to need a little bit of like special attention to make sure she doesn't, pee all over the house or bark at people or, wreck the Christmas tree or whatever the things are that, dog in the house. It's like going to be some things to remember around that too. So if I can take her for a walk, then that gets me out and gets me some quiet time that's, you know, not caring for anyone else. It's just me and the dog. So that's definitely an option. And definitely, like, at some point I want to take a bath.
Good one. Yeah. Right.
We like made sure we have a bathtub in our, you know, remodeled bathroom, and I've like yet to take a bath in it. So definitely I should do that.
And that's like that. I mean, everything you made happen to be able to be in that house and be in that situation, like, and everything like that would be I would imagine, like, so rewarding to finally take that nice long bath in there. What do you need to do to make sure that you will have that happen? Is it something you could actually put on a schedule, or ask your husband, you know, ask Dylan to be like, this is you guys need to pretend I'm not even home for these 2 hours or something, or like,
and like they actually need to be either out of the house or asleep.
Good point. Okay.
Let me do that.
Right. And is there a certain day that you know that you might just need a little bit more of that, like, kind of like nurturing tenderness? Like, you mentioned loss, you mentioned grief. I'm just wondering if there are certain, you know, sometimes it's on a specific day that things come up, and it's a really good time for us to do that sort of like nurturing, you know, self-care. Is there a day or zone in that, you know, 10 days or so that would be wise? I mean, you could also just plan it right in the midpoint to make sure that you've got something to sort of like carry you through the rest of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, definitely. So it's, I've noticed that like the day after Christmas, or like the day after Christmas, like the 26th, 27th, because my parents, you know, passed away, sometimes that's when I kind of come down from the high of Christmas and feel that loss a little bit more. So that would be some good timing maybe to, you know, plan some rituals, of course, to think about them and remember them, like get out the photo albums and stuff like that. But also it would be a good time for maybe, you know, Dylan to take the kids to the park for an hour so I can have a bath and have a little time for self-care.
Okay. So I would love for your assignment, when it's like, you know, you could do it now if you want to, so you don't forget. When you text Dylan that message and say, look, Dylan, it's going to be really important for me to have an hour or two on the 26th or the 27th. You know, when can you bring the kids to the park, or can we expect that it's going to happen on one of those days? The reason I do this for you, Jenesse, is because we can easily put ourselves second, third, fourth, or fifth in you know, as parents, but especially as moms. And you know, I think all parents can relate to this, that, like, you know, the time just flies by, and next thing you know, you haven't even eaten or something, right? So so I want this for you so much that I would love for you to take a step, just take an action step, so it's like a placeholder for you. And second thing that happens when we do that, when we actually schedule our self-care, and I've actually had a self-care practitioner explain this to me. She goes, I don't have my clients schedule their next appointment just because I want the business. I do it for them. And I asked her, what do you mean? And she said, well, you know, the thing that happens is that when we know that like resource, or that reset, or that, you know, self-care moment is coming, oftentimes we, like, our whole system like just starts to like relax, knowing that it's coming, and that you're not going to have to be you know, all the time. It's like when you plan a vacation and you look forward to it, and you can do that one last push at work or something, right? So yeah, that's my plug for putting it on your calendar as soon as possible.
Very astute. Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I'm gonna do it.
Good. And just rest until, like, oh, that bath is coming, you know.
Exactly.
And I also love that you did the hack of like, let's build in self-care on a routine that already needs to happen. That's the other thing that's really good about starting a new habit, or making sure something happens, is like attaching it to an already existing routine. So if you're like, I want to get fresh air and a walk, and daily my dog needs a walk, perfect. Like, what a great range of those things. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's a really good one. All right. Well, so Jenesse, I'm just so glad that you were able to, you know, spend this time with, you know, with me, and you know, talking about ways of managing the holidays, and how that, you know, amongst all the craziness that can happen, there can be we can make space for joy and for more enjoyment and less stress if you go into it with some proactive, you know, plans, especially around, you know, big emotion kids. And you've been blessed with a really powerful and who's going to do amazing things in the future with her, all that passion and power. And for now, you know, at her age, we're just trying to help her get that fortitude.
I did want to share a win, which was she started gymnastics, and it's so great because she does have all this energy and all this, passion and spirit. And it's just such a much better fit than dance class, because it was like in dance class, it was like yet another authority figure, like making her do this one thing that she had to do every time. And gymnastics is like full of variety, full of different coaches. She's like doing all these cool things. She learned to do a proper cartwheel, like her very first gymnastics class. And she's super proud of herself and excited. And I hope it continues, but it's really awesome to see her like blossoming in this environment that's much more like just a better fit with her personality.
What a good find. And what a great insight too, to see the difference between the way the dance class is set up and the way the gymnastics class is set up, and understanding like how each one, like, rubs her the wrong way or the rubs her the right way in terms of her personality and what she needs out of the experience. So I'm so happy that you found, an activity that really supports her. Well done.
That's cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, I just see like, I'm so excited to like reconnect with you after the holiday and hear like all the new memories that you've created together. Every time we have these like kind of holiday rituals and things like we have these new experiences that we layer over the years and time. And I'm so curious to see how these particular strategies go. So thank you for being willing to, go through all these different scenarios and possibilities today.
Yeah.
Wow. Your kids are very lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.